Hello, this is Yogeshwar 7000 again, and I'm back on another very interesting video. And today we'll be talking about this topic on what the great sage Bhrigu, what his sutras have talked about sun being in the second house. We did discuss about a Bhrigu Sutra interpretation on sun in the ascendant of the first house in our earlier video, and today we'll be talking what sage Bhrigu says about sun in the second house. Now sage Bhrigu, as we know, he is one of the Saptarishis, and second generation to sage Bhrigu was sage Parashara, and following was sage Jaimini, and the other sages followed. So technically we consider sage Bhrigu as the father of Vedic astrology, and other than he writing hundreds and thousands of birth charts, or creating rather hundreds and thousands of birth charts which represented the destinies of all people born presently in his age, past and future, for all times to come. He created those birth charts, which is a mystery in itself, how he could create such a permutation and combination where these hundreds of thousands of birth charts could actually interpret the destinies of billions of people who would be born after him. That itself is a mystery. But anyways, he also explained Vedic astrology, or taught Vedic astrology, and his works have been mentioned in his sutras called the Bhrigu Sutras, and we'll be discussing today what the great sage mentioned on sun being in the second house. So sun, of course, there's no confusion, or there's no contradiction rather, on whether sun is a benefic or not, and we all know that sun is not a benefic. Some people call sun a malefic. However, a few astrologers do not consider sun being a malefic, just because of the fact that it's a very sattvic planet. There's sattva guna in it. However, it's extremely hot, and it could get cruel at times, and it can destroy the house where it is placed, or it can make other planets combust which come in close proximity to the planet sun. And of course, in Vedic astrology we consider sun as a planet, although it's stationary, but in relationship to the earth there is a motion of sun, and although we know that it's the earth which goes around the sun, not the other way around, but in Vedic astrology we interpret sun as a planet which is in motion, which is moving around the zodiac, and it goes around the zodiac of 360 degrees, or 12 houses, in approximately 1 year, in relationship to the earth, of course. So the sutras on sun being in the second house says that in case sun is in the second house, and the person is going to suffer from the diseases of the mouth. Now why mouth? Because we all know that the second house represents mouth. And why will he suffer? Just because we know that although sun is not a malefic, but it's a hot planet, it can get cruel at times. So a person, according to sage Bhrigu, and of course there could be slight variations and disagreements or contradictions by the other sages, but this is what sage Bhrigu says, that the person will suffer from diseases of the mouth. Okay. And also sage Bhrigu has mentioned that in his 25th year, in case sun is in the second house, he will incur wrath of the government. Now why government? Because sun represents government and authority, and as a sufferer of the wrath of the government, the person will suffer loss of wealth. Why wealth? Why? Because the second house represents wealth. So sun being a major hot planet is actually going to be responsible for destroying the wealth of the native. And how will it be responsible in destroying the wealth? Because sun represents the government, so through government that person will lose his wealth. And he's very specifically mentioned that in case sun is in the second house, that will happen in his 25th year. So please make a note of it. And however, there's a slight comment here by Sage Brigu that this will not happen in case Sun is in Aries. So what happens when Sun is in Aries? Meaning which, in case it's Pisces ascendant, then in the second house, if Sun is placed, it'll be in the zodiac sign of Aries. And what happens when Sun is in Aries? It gets exalted. So Sage Brigu is very clear on that. He says the wrath of the government and loss of wealth is not going to happen in case Sun is exalted in the second house, or in case Sun is in its own sign. And when does it get in its own sign? When it's in Leo. So then the ascendant is going to be Cancer, obviously. So if it's a Cancer ascendant and Sun is sitting in the second house, then he will not lose his wealth on account of government punishment or the wrath of the government. So please make a little note of this, that yes, Sun can get destructive. However, it does not get destructive once it is in its own sign. Now, Sage Brigu has also mentioned that in case Sun is associated with a malefic. And how does it get associated with a malefic? Well, it can get associated through conjunction, meaning which another malefic is sitting along with Sun. And the malefics, as we know, are Saturn, Rahu, Ketu, and Mars. These are major malefics. So if Sun and these malefics, one of these malefics or multiple malefics, are sitting in the second house, or there's an association through aspects. So if one of the malefics, even if they are not sitting, if they're aspecting the Sun in the second house, then the person will get diseases of the eyes. He will have very little knowledge of the ancient scriptures and will remain in bad health. Now, why will he get diseases of the eye? Because as we know that Sun is about light. It also represents light in the eyes. And also the second house represents the eye as well. So in case Sun has an association with a malefic, and especially it happens, you would have noticed that if there is an association of major malefics like Rahu and Ketu. Of course, Saturn and Mars are also malefics, but if it happens with a major malefic like Rahu and Ketu, the results are even more severe. So second house represents eye, and the Sun also represents eye to some extent, because not directly, but because it represents light, and it represents light of the eyes. And actually directly as well, Sun is representative of the eyes as well. It's a significator of the eyes as well. So the association of bad planets, aspect or conjunction, is going to put pressure on the Sun, and his eyes will be affected, being in the second house. He will have little knowledge of the ancient scriptures. Why? Because Sun represents the Vedas, the ancient scriptures. So people who have an exalted Sun, or Sun is in its own sign, or Sun in a Navamsha of Leo, or Sun exalted in the Navamsha, they generally are very, very learned as far as ancient scriptures, and especially Vedas are concerned. Why? Because Vedas are directly related to Sun. And he will remain in ill health. So Sun also represents vitality, and Sun, of course, once it's in the second house and it is being aspected by malefics, or it is conjunct with malefics, then health is going to suffer, because Sun represents vitality as well. Now, on the other hand, Sage Brigu has mentioned, in case Sun is aspected by benefics instead, then these evil effects are not going to be felt. Like evil effects like Sun not being the evil effects are, the Sun, because of bad Sun, people not being learned in Shastras or ancient scriptures. The other evil effects could be bad health and also diseases of the eyes. So he has given a condition that in case the Sun, which is sitting in the second house, is not aspected or does not have an association of malefics. On the other hand, if it has association of the benefics, it's been aspected, or if it's conjunct benefics, then he will be protected from these evil effects, and he will also become wealthy. Why wealthy? Because second house again represents wealth. Also, there's another condition or another combination rather, which Sage Brigu has mentioned, is that in case Sun is sitting with Mercury in the second house, a person could stammer. He could stammer while his speech could be defective. And why is that? Because what will happen is that Sun with Mercury is going to afflict Mercury, and Mercury is about communication, and Mercury especially sitting in the second house, which is also a house of speech. So it's going to affect the house of speech. Mercury, Karaka, or the significator of speech anyways, being afflicted by Sun, and affliction by the Sun would actually make it combust, very, very combust. So then a person will have speaking problems. Another condition or another combination which Sage Brigu has mentioned is that in case the Lord of the second house, now he starts to talk about Lord. Earlier he was talking about the placement of planets, conjunction with malefic or benefic planets, aspects of malefic and benefic planets, and now he's talking about the Lord of the second house. So be very clearly distinctive about these combinations which the sage has mentioned, when he's mentioned that in case the Lord of the second house is sitting in its sign of exaltation, then of course even though Sun being a hot planet which is destroying the second house, still a person will be knowledgeable in ancient scriptures. He will be a good speaker. His speech will not have any problems. He'll be a very smooth speaker and he'll speak clearly, and he will enjoy good eyesight. So the condition here is either Sun, which is destroying the second house, the eyesight, the health, and the speech, should be aspected by benefics to remove these ill effects, or the Lord of the second house should be in its sign of exaltation. Then the bad effects of Sun are not going to be felt. So please, don't just jump to a conclusion when you see Sun sitting in its second house and destroying the second house. No, first see, well, is Sun exalted or debilitated? If it's exalted, there's no problem. Is it sitting in its own sign of Leo or not? If it is sitting in its own sign of Leo, no problem. Is it being aspected by benefics or malefics? That will determine whether Sun is going to give good results or not. And also, in case these combinations are not applying and Sun is still being a major hot planet or destructive planet for the second house, look at the Lord of the second house. In case it's sitting in its sign of exaltation in any other sign, in any other house rather, then of course the ill effects are not going to be felt, and on the contrary, a person will be learned, he'll be good in speech, and he'll enjoy good eyesight. Eyesight is a very important feature here as far as Sun is concerned. It's been mentioned by the sage Brigu, and also it has been confirmed by several sages following sage Brigu, even the recent ones, that yes, Sun has a direct connection with the eyesight. So whenever Sun affects the second house and even the first house, if you refer to my earlier videos, Sun is representative of the eyes. So it gets too hot, and in case it's not sitting in its own sign or exaltation, then the eyesight could be affected. So hopefully you enjoyed this little video on Sun being in the second house as described by sage Brigu in his sutras, his Brigu Sutras. And in the meanwhile, I will recommend subscribe to my channel, check out my website, there is a link below, and I'll see you with an interesting topic very soon. Goodbye.